I always believed I understood people. How they moved, how they lied, how their emotions seeped through even the smallest gestures. 30 years on the bench had taught me that truth rarely announces itself. It reveals itself in fragments. But nothing in my long career prepared me for the night my daughter-in-law hurled a glass at my face, shattering not only the stemware, but the illusion of stability my family had been clinging to for years. My name is Elena. I'm a retired criminal judge, recently widowed, and quieter than I used to be. Age softened my voice but sharpened my perception, leaving me with the unsettling ability to read discomfort the way others read weather forecasts. That evening, as I prepared a simple dinner for my son Michael, his wife Claire, and their daughter Lily, I sensed a storm approaching. Not loud or dramatic, but tightly coiled, ready to snap. Michael arrived first, looking older than his 38 years. His shoulders sagged, his smile wavered, and exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. He kissed my cheek and set the salad bowl on the counter, his eyes avoiding mine in a way that told me he was carrying more than he intended to share. He had always been gentle, thoughtful, careful with the feelings of others. Lately, though, he moved like a man drained by invisible tides. Lily followed him inside, her hand clutching a paper drawing she'd made at school. She thrust it toward me, a scribbled portrait of the two of us holding hands, and I felt a warmth spread through me despite the tension lingering in the air. Children have a way of grounding truth, their innocence unfiltered and frighteningly honest. Claire entered last, her perfume arriving half a second before she did. Sharp, floral, forceful. She wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and she dropped her bag onto a chair with a thud that made Lily flinch. Claire was younger than Michael, energetic in a way that could be charming or volatile depending on the hour. Tonight, her energy vibrated too quickly like a wire stretched too tight. "Long day," she muttered as she uncorked a bottle of wine before anyone could ask. The bottle tilted, filling her glass to the brim. We took our seats at the dining table, the four of us enclosed in a silence that felt both familiar and unsettling. Every clink of cutlery echoed. Every breath seemed weighted. Claire drained her glass before the roast even reached her plate. Michael watched her with a tremor of worry he tried desperately to hide. That was when I realized the dinner wasn't merely strained. It was brittle. And brittle things break. I didn't yet know how violently the evening would unfold, nor did I understand the depth of the secrets pressing against the edges of our family. I only knew this. The quiet tension surrounding Claire wasn't the discomfort of a long day. It was the prelude to a rupture we could no longer avoid. The first sign that the evening was slipping out of Michael's control was how tightly he gripped his fork. He wasn't eating. He was simply holding the utensil as if it tethered him to the moment. Across from him, Claire tapped her fingernails against her wine glass, each click sharper than the last. She had refilled it twice already, her movements brisk, almost impatient, as if the dinner itself were an inconvenience she was forced to endure. I watched the two of them with the uneasy clarity I used to feel in court when testimony began to contradict itself. Something between them was unraveling. Slowly, painfully, and with a quiet desperation Michael no longer knew how to disguise. "Mom's roast smells amazing," he said suddenly too brightly. His voice trembled at the edges. Claire didn't respond. She simply took another long sip, her eyes fixed on a spot just beyond my shoulder, as if focusing on any of us required too much effort. Lily shifted in her seat. Children sense tension instinctively, and she sensed enough to stay silent. Her small hand inched toward her father's arm, seeking reassurance. Michael placed his free hand over hers, but his gaze remained trained on Claire. I tried to keep the atmosphere steady. "Claire," I said gently, "why don't you tell us about your project at work? Michael mentioned you've been busy." Her eyes flicked to mine, cool, guarded, unreadable. "I'm sure he told you everything already." The bitterness in her voice was so subtle it almost sounded like exhaustion. Michael inhaled sharply. "Claire, that's not what she meant." "Oh, I'm sure." She rolled her eyes, the motion sharp enough to cut. "I'm sure you've had plenty of conversations about me behind my back." The room stilled. Lily looked between us, her confusion raw and unfiltered. I held my ground, keeping my tone measured. "No one is talking behind your back. We're trying to have a peaceful dinner." Her laugh was soft but hollow. "Peaceful? In this house?" She lifted her glass again, draining what remained. Michael's patience snapped in that quiet, heartbreaking way gentle people break. "Claire, please. We talked about cutting back." "Oh, here we go." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly across the tile. "The rules. The reminders. The judgments. I can't breathe without someone telling me how wrong I am." Her words were tight, her shoulders rigid. For the first time, I saw something beneath her anger. Fear, perhaps, or guilt pressing outward like a bruise. Michael rose halfway from his seat. "We're not judging you. We're worried." Claire stepped back as if the word wounded her. "Don't pretend this is concern. This is control." I sensed the moment balancing on a fragile edge. One wrong word could tip it entirely. "Claire," I said softly, "sit down. We can." But she didn't let me finish. She turned away, pacing toward the counter with trembling hands. The room echoed with a silence heavy enough to crush. And then, without warning, she spun back toward the table. There was something new in her eyes. Something that made my stomach tighten. Something that told me the night was about to break open. Claire stood rigidly beside the counter, her back rising and falling with shallow breaths. The kitchen lights carved sharp shadows across her face, revealing the agitation she could no longer mask. She wasn't simply angry. She was unraveling in real time. And for the first time that evening, I realized just how far she had drifted from the woman Michael once believed he knew. Michael hovered near his chair, torn between stepping toward her and stepping back. "Claire," he said gently, "we can talk. You don't have to do this." Her fingers curled around the edge of the counter. "Do what? Defend myself? Because that's all I ever do in this house." "You're not being attacked," he whispered. "You're scaring us." She turned her head sharply, eyes narrowing. "I'm scaring you? Do you hear yourself? Maybe if you listened to me instead of running to your mother." "I didn't run to anyone," he said, voice cracking. "You're drinking too fast. You're angry. I'm just trying to understand." "You never understand," she shot back, each word trembling. "You never even try." The tension tightened around us like a wire. Lily pressed closer to her seat, her small shoulders drawn inward, her eyes wide with a confusion she didn't know how to name. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my tone level. "Claire, why don't we step outside for a moment? Get some air. Sometimes a pause helps." No, her refusal was swift, almost panicked. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving this room just so you two can whisper about me again." "No one is whispering," Michael said softly. "That's the problem," she snapped. "You're all just quiet, watching me, waiting for me to prove you right." Her voice wavered at that last word. Right, as if she feared it more than she hated it. Michael took a slow step toward her. "Claire, please. Let's calm down." She backed away again, bumping into the counter. The half-filled wine bottle rattled beside her, the sound startling her into stillness. Her gaze darted to the bottle, then to me. Something flickered behind her eyes, resentment, defensiveness, something darker pulling at the edges of her expression. "You think you can tell me when to stop drinking?" she said, her voice quieter now, almost eerily calm. "You think you can control me just like you control everyone else?" "I'm not trying to control you," I replied, steady and measured. "I'm trying to keep you safe." She laughed softly, but there was no warmth in it. "Safe? You want to keep me safe?" Her hand drifted toward the wine bottle, as if drawn by an invisible force. "You can't even keep yourself out of my business." Michael's face paled. "Claire, don't." She wrapped her fingers around the bottle, lifting it as if she needed the weight to anchor herself. The motion wasn't threatening yet, but it wasn't harmless either. The room froze around her, every breath becoming a cautious calculation. "Everyone expects me to be perfect," she said through clenched teeth. "Everyone waits for me to fail. Well, maybe I'm tired of pretending." She set the bottle down abruptly. And then she reached for her glass. But this time she didn't pour. She turned toward the table with a look that sent a cold shiver through me. Something decisive, something final. That was when I knew the night was about to cross a line we could never step back from. The moment Claire stepped toward the table, glass in hand, the air seemed to thicken around us. Her posture was rigid, her movements sharp and deliberate, as if she had already crossed some invisible line within herself and could no longer retreat. The anger in her eyes wasn't loud. It was cold, concentrated, and terrifyingly certain. Michael moved first. "Claire, stop. Please. Think about Lily. Don't you dare use her," Claire hissed, her voice trembling with something far more complicated than fury. "Don't you dare pretend you're doing any of this for her." I rose slowly from my chair, matching her movements with calm precision. "Put the glass down," I said softly. "We can solve whatever this is. But not like this." Her lips pressed into a thin, quivering line. "Solve it? You really think this can be solved? You don't even know what's happening." "Then tell us," Michael urged. "Tell me. I'm your husband." "Exactly," she said, voice cracking. "And that's what makes this worse." Her hand tightened around the stem of the glass. A hairline fracture glinted near the base, something I wouldn't have noticed if I weren't watching her so closely. Claire wasn't clumsy. She wasn't careless. She was breaking, and she didn't know how to stop. "You want honesty?" she whispered. "Fine. Here it is. I'm drowning, Michael. Drowning. I'm behind on payments, I'm getting calls at work, I can't sleep. And every time I look at you, all I see is disappointment." Michael's shoulders fell, grief tightening his face. "Claire, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you already look at me like I'm failing." Her voice grew raw. "I didn't want to give you proof." Her confession hung between us. Heavy, unsteady, fragile. But it wasn't the whole truth. Not yet. I watched her expression shift, her jaw tense, her eyes flick downward, not in shame but in calculation. The way a witness looks when they are deciding whether or not to speak the final, damning sentence. "I didn't just fall behind on bills," she said finally, each word deliberate. "I took money. From the account. The one you said we'd never touch without talking." Michael's breath caught. "Claire, what account?" She swallowed hard. "The inheritance fund." The room fell silent. I felt the impact of her confession like a physical blow. That account wasn't just money. It was memory, protection, a safety net built by generations. Michael had guarded it carefully, almost reverently. "You stole from our family?" he whispered. "I borrowed," she snapped, even as her voice shook. "I was going to put it back. I just needed time." "How much?" he asked. Her silence answered for her. My pulse quickened. I stepped closer. "Claire, look at me. How much did you take?" Her eyes filled with tears that clung stubbornly to her lashes. "Enough that they're threatening legal action if I don't pay it back." Michael stumbled back as if struck. "Legal action? From who?" Claire's tears finally broke. "The people I owe. The ones I borrowed from to keep everything from falling apart." For a moment no one moved. The glass in her hand trembled. Her chest heaved. And then, with a sudden, desperate shift of emotion, she turned her gaze toward me. Accusing, anguished, almost pleading. "This is your fault," she whispered. The words hit like ice. Before I could respond, she lifted the cracked glass. And in that split second I realized we were no longer dealing with anger. We were dealing with someone who had nothing left to lose. The following week unfolded under a strange, heavy silence, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Mara moved through the rooms with practiced calm, but an undercurrent of tension shadowed her every step. She knew both Daniel and Evelyn were watching her, Daniel with uneasy loyalty, Evelyn with growing resentment. But she refused to let their shifting attitudes shake her focus. The truth was finally moving, piece by piece, toward the surface, and she wasn't about to let it sink again. Evelyn returned from school earlier than usual, her backpack hanging carelessly from one shoulder. Daniel trailed behind, carrying a stack of documents Mara had asked for. His face was pale, his eyes troubled, but he said nothing until they were both inside. Mara directed them to sit at the dining table, which she had cleared except for one thin folder. It lay in the center like a silent accusation. "I need both of you to listen," Mara said, her voice low but unwavering. "What I'm about to show you will explain everything you've been confused about, and everything someone has tried to hide." Evelyn rolled her eyes, but there was a flicker of curiosity beneath her impatience. Daniel leaned forward, as though bracing himself. Mara opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of bank statements, land registry records, and a notarized letter. For years, Mara had suspected something was wrong with the way her father-in-law's estate had been handled, but until recently, she had no proof. Now the pages spoke for her. "These documents show that the farm wasn't simply given away out of sentiment," she said. "It was transferred under pressure. Pressure from someone who knew your grandfather was ill and vulnerable." Daniel's breath hitched. Evelyn's expression sharpened, her bravado shrinking. Mara continued. "He tried to protect what he could, but he couldn't argue anymore. And the person who benefited from that pressure is the same person who told you I didn't deserve anything." A beat of silence. The truth hovered, waiting to land. Evelyn's lips parted in a soft gasp. "Are you saying, Dad?" "I'm saying someone manipulated him, and manipulated both of you," Mara clarified gently. "The anger you feel toward me, someone planted it there because they didn't want you to look in their direction." Daniel bowed his head, shame rippling across his face. Evelyn stared at the documents, her earlier defiance dissolving. "But why?" Evelyn whispered. Mara met her gaze steadily. "Because greed makes people do things they never imagined. And because they trusted your confusion more than they trusted my silence." For a moment no one spoke. The walls seemed to lean inward, tightening around the weight of revelation. Then Daniel exhaled shakily. What do we do now? Mara closed the folder with deliberate calm. Now, she said, we follow the truth no matter where it leads. Her words hung in the room like a promise or a warning. And somewhere beyond that tense stillness, the next inevitable confrontation waited.